The Stone Killer, 1973, carries a different kind of tension. Again, you see Charles Bronson, but here the world around him feels more important than the character himself. The city is not just a setting, it behaves like an organism built from corruption and memory. Organized crime is not presented as chaos, but as structure. Something layered over decades. The action sequences exist, but they never fully detach from the environment. Even when violence erupts, it feels like it belongs to the place. Michael Winner directs with a kind of controlled detachment, and that is what makes it unsettling. You start thinking about how many invisible systems are operating in the background of everyday life. And the film never gives you comfort. It simply shows you movement inside decay and asks you to sit with it. Rolling Thunder, 1977. Feels like it belongs to a different emotional frequency entirely. William Devane plays a Vietnam veteran returning home. But returning is not really the right word. Something has followed him back. Something unfinished. The screenplay by Paul Schrader carries a quiet psychological pressure, the kind that does not explain itself. You are watching a man who is trying to function inside a world that no longer feels structurally normal to him. And the violence in this film does not feel heroic or stylized. It feels like leakage, something spilling out from places that cannot be contained anymore. There is a famous bar scene where nothing dramatic happens on the surface, but everything inside the character feels like it is tightening. Think about that for a moment. A war film where the real battlefield is not overseas, but inside the silence after returning home. Sorcerer, 1977. Shifts the tone again, and this is where things become almost hypnotic. Directed by William Friedkin, it follows men transporting unstable explosives through impossible terrain. But reducing it to that description feels unfair. The film is really about pressure, about waiting, about machines that refuse to cooperate with human intention. There is a sequence involving a rope bridge that has become legendary. But what makes it powerful is not the danger alone. It is the patience the film demands from you. It refuses to rush. It lets uncertainty build slowly until you realize you are no longer just watching tension, you are experiencing it physically. You might notice your own breathing changing. That is not accident, that is construction. The Driver, 1978, removes almost everything except control. Ryan O'Neal plays a getaway driver who speaks very little and moves with almost unnatural precision. Walter Hill directs the film like a study in geometry. Space matters more than dialogue. Distance matters more than personality. Even the chase sequences feel unusually clean, almost abstract, like watching systems collide rather than people. And that is where the film becomes interesting. You are not asked to connect emotionally in the traditional sense. You are asked to observe structure. Think about how rare that is in action cinema, even today. A film that refuses emotional explanation and still holds your attention entirely through movement. Dirty Mary Crazy Larry, 1974. Feels more chaotic, but that chaos is deceptive. Peter Fonda and Susan George are not just running from the law, they are running inside a kind of emotional instability that keeps shifting tone. The film never fully settles into one identity. It feels like it is constantly adjusting itself in real time. There is a train sequence that stands out not because of scale, but because of timing. Everything feels slightly misaligned, as if the world is responding just a little too late to human decisions. And that delay creates tension in a way modern action films often forget. Not everything needs to explode. Sometimes it just needs to almost miss. Free the Hard Way, 1974. Introduces something different. Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, and Jim Kelly come together in a structure that feels like it was designed to reflect a broader cultural tension rather than just action storytelling. The film moves through conspiracy, control systems, and targeted violence with a directness that does not pause to explain itself. It assumes you are already aware of the world it is referencing. That confidence makes it feel sharper than many films of its era. The action is straightforward, but the context underneath it carries weight. You are watching a story that is not just about conflict, but about who gets organized against. The Spikes Gang, 1974, is quieter, almost deceptively simple at first. It follows young characters drifting into violence without fully understanding what they are entering. There is a softness in the beginning that slowly dissolves. Richard Fleischer directs it with restraint, allowing consequences to arrive without dramatic announcement. That is what makes it unsettling. You are not watching sudden transformation. You are watching gradual erosion. And by the time the story reaches its darker points, it feels less like escalation and more like inevitability catching up with them. The final two films in this forgotten group do something slightly different. They blur the line between action and psychological collapse. In many ways, that is the real signature of 1970s underrated action cinema. It was never just about fights or chases. It was about what those things leave behind inside people. And if you think about it carefully, that is what separates these films from modern equivalents. They do not end when the action stops. They continue quietly inside your mind long after. And maybe that is the strange truth here. These films were not ignored because they were weak. They were ignored because they were uncomfortable in a very specific way. They refused to simplify violence into entertainment. They treated it like consequence. And when you return to them now, decades later, they do not feel outdated. They feel honest in a way that is almost unsettling. So the question is not why these films were forgotten. The real question is why they still feel so difficult to forget once you finally find them.